This week, in the third and final one in this short series, I thought I'd take a look at making a basic fence. Um, Now, in this one, unlike past where I've looked at building my own fences using things like matchsticks or coffee stirrers and things like that, I am actually going to be utilising some of the MDF all sorts box that you've probably seen me raid before, that I've had kicking around for years. So I'm gonna use some of that and see if we can make something that looks reasonably presentable. Right, let me get set up and I'll bring right back. Right, so I've raided that all sorts box of MDF fences that you've seen me use before, and I've managed to find quite a lot of this one. In fact, to be honest, this was probably the only style that I'd got enough of to do a meaningful number of fences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the smaller pieces and I'm going to cut up some of these so I can make a corner piece for the fence. Because unlike the edges, you can't just butt them together and get away with it. So I think I'm going to make sacrifice a couple of these in half and make corner pieces up, and then I should have enough for 2, 3. I'll have a bit over, but I could probably get 6 lengths of fence out of it, and then the corners. So that'd be quite a meaningful amount. I could get it around, a field or along the edge of a building. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut all of these to size, to the lengths of my pieces of base, and then I'll bring you back. Right, I came up with a bit of an idea because I wanted to try and keep it the uniform, like with my hedges, and have 8 pieces. Now I hadn't got enough lengths to make the 8, so I came up with the idea. I found this other type of fence, and what I've done is I've cut off one of these spare pieces and put it diagonally on it to make it into a gate. That way I'm going to use that as a gate length. And that's allowed me to use the 2 short pieces just to get enough to make the 8. And that's all I've got left over, just these few bits. And I know what you're thinking, what about the corners? Well, I actually jumped ahead and I've made up the corner pieces with some other little bits that were too short for anything else. So I've made 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So they're all glued, ready. So all I've got to do now is attach these to the bases, which is what I'm going to be doing now. Sure these line up well with the corners. Yeah. Make sure it's true. I will be strengthening these as well. I ain't going to rely on just the super glue fix. I've just done that for speed's sake, really. I think the rewarding thing about this project has been the fact that I've used up some bits in the last few projects that have been kicking around for ages. Right, I'll get the rest of these done and then I'll bring you back. Right, I've just glued the last of them in place. That's how the fence has worked out. Right, well now that these have dried, I mean I've speeded it up with the accelerator on the super glue, so I can press straight on now and give these all a quick blast of a basic brown primer to get them ready for the next stage. Right, I've given these a coat of primer, gone for an oak brown, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some of the Vallejo old wood to give it a dry brush. That's what it's looking like now. Right, I'll get the rest of these done and then I'll bring you back. Right, well they're all dry brushed and they've had time to dry. So the next thing I'm going to do is put a bit of a mixed grass scatter on the bottom here, using some basing glue. I'm just going to tip a little bit out into my pot. I'm going to try not to get it on the fence. No matter if we get the bottom of it. I'm going to make sure I get all the edges as well. Bring my tray in. Right, so in the interest of using up all the little odds and ends that I've got that seem to have gathered along the way, I've got this little pot. Now, basically, when I first set out doing things, I'd often add various different types of scatter, but not necessarily gather it up before I went to the next type. So when I did save it, I ended up with a bit of a mixture. It is a bit of a mixture, mind. There's various bits of scatter I can see in there, different tones. the odd bit of yellow from flowers, and what looks like some 4mm static grass bits of it in there. So it's a bit of a mishmash, but in the interest of being frugal, I'm going to use it. Actually, it doesn't look too bad for a mix sweeping. Alright, so I'll get the rest of these up to the same condition and then I'll bring you back. Right, so that's all of them done. I'm going to let them dry now before I do anything else, and then I'll give it a final shake off. But I'll tell you what, one thing that never ceases to amaze me is just how much, how far, that scatter goes. I mean, this tub, it wasn't full by any means, and look how much I've still got left. And as I say, I'll probably shake a bit more off yet from them. And then I look at my stock and I see all these big pots full of it, and I'm thinking, I'm never going to use all that, but every time I go and buy some, I think, oh, I better get a bigger one. And it just shows you how much you can get done with just a small amount. So the lesson I'm going to take from this is never buy a big bag anymore. Unless, of course, you're doing big boards, things like that, then you're going to need it. But for little projects like I'm doing, it's surprising how little you can get away with. Anyway, I'm rambling. So I'll let these dry and then I'll bring you back. Right, it's not completely gone off yet, but it's getting there. Enough for me to handle it, at least, if I'm careful. So what I'm going to do now, I could leave them like this, just plain fences, but I thought I'm going to dress them up a little bit with some clump foliage. Now, I've been having a look through what I've got, and I've got some fairly dark green. I've got some olive coloured. I've got a tiny bit of yellowy green left, light green. And I don't know where I got this one, but to be honest, I very rarely use it because it's a bit weird. It's light green, but it's got little bits of flower mixed in it. Yellows and blues and reds. I don't know how I come by it. I don't know how I come by it, to be honest. Whether I picked it up in a job lot, I don't know. But I don't use very much of it. But I might try and use a tiny bit on this, just so, it gets an outing. But what I'm going to do, because this is still not completely gone off, and because ultimately I want to seal it with some watered down PVA, I don't want to risk washing it back off. I want to be able to, get it moving along, and then I can do the PVA layer pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do to speed it up is I'm going to use a little bit from my glue gun, because that'll instantly put it in place, and then I can quickly get on to pasting it up to seal everything. So first thing I'm going to do I'm going to pull a little bit of the dark green, and we'll start with the gated piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the little blob of glue on the actual piece. And then put the clump foliage straight into it. And that's going to grab it straight away. Do another bit by the gate. And the thing is, you've got to work fairly fast. Before the glue sets. Oh, that's that in there. Well, I'm going to break that up and put something a bit different on the other side of the gate. So I'm going to have a little piece of the light green. There we go. Don't want too much. I'm going to go bigger in some areas though, you know, because I want to break it up a bit. I don't want it to look too samey. I think what I'll do is I'll go with a bit of the olive green now for the end of this one. That one actually climbing onto the fence a bit. Thing is, I just don't want it to look too uniform. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to focus on one side first, and then I'll go and dress any bits I want to put on the other sides. So let me adjust my camera a little bit, and then you might be able to see a bit more of what I'm doing. Right, on this one, let's go for it and have a little bit of that peculiar mixed one. Perhaps don't look too bad in small amounts. There we go, look. That's not too bad. Small a bit now, I think. going to do is I'm going to mix it up a bit. I'm going to put a little bit of the lighter one sat in front of it. Like that. Just to try and mix it up a little bit. Right, I'll go along and add some more onto these and then I'll bring you back. Right, I've gone down one side of each one now. Tried to make them all look a little bit different. Different combinations. And change the space in sometimes less. And the same with the corners really. Sometimes actually on the corner, sometimes to the side. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the reverse side of all of them. And again, I want to mix it up a bit. Sometimes I'm going to have it so it's directly behind the one on front, sometimes a little bit to the middle. Don't want to overdo it, but I want to make sure it looks like a decent amount of cover. I mean, I know the fence is, it's cover anyway, but I want it to look the part, look like a soldier would run down the side of it and feel he was relatively out of sight. But at the same time, I don't want to overdo it, so... Right, we'll start with this one. Now this one has got next to nothing on that side, just one bit either end. So I think on this one I can afford to put a bit more than on the other side. Alright, so that's the first bit that I'm putting on. Don't worry about these will come off afterwards, these strings of glue. Trying to keep it to a minimum, but you know what do you call glue gun? Glue gun glue gun glue. You know what it's like, it's very stringy. The other thing about this, of course, it gives a greater degree of stability to the fence. It's no longer relying on just the super glue. Right, I'm going to leave it at that with that one. I don't want it to appear too uniform. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll get the rest of the other sides all complete, and then I'll give them a good soak with some watered down PVA just to seal all this in. And as soon as that's done, I'll bring you back and we can wind this one up. Right, so as you can see, they're all complete now. Again, they've dried out really well with the PVA coating. Everything's settled down really well, and all the shrubs that I've put on have hardened up quite nicely. I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised with how the weird one turned out. You know, the one with all the bits in it. It doesn't look too bad in small doses. So maybe it'll get another turnout at some point. But it certainly added to the, you know, feel of variety to the fences that I've made in the past. I mean, as I say, I've made them from matchsticks, you know, right from the, you know, basics, you know, built my own fences. So it was different using these MDF fences, but as I say, I'd had them kicking around for a long time and they really needed using. And although they are fairly basic, you can still get a reasonable fence out of them. And the bonus for me is that I'm using up a lot of this old stock and getting it out of the way, which allows me to condense things a bit more. Again, as with the previous two videos, I managed to squeeze the last of my rabbits in there just to make it my own. But yeah, that's made a nice little set. So I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found something, you know, that you can utilise from it. And if you have, please consider giving me a thumbs up and possibly subscribe. And then if you tick the bell, you'll get to see when any future videos drop. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed this small series. It is perhaps something I could return to in the future. If it is something you'd like me to see me return to, you know, drop me a comment. I always read all my comments, and you know, any suggestions are more than welcome. Anyway, I'll wrap up for now, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.